we started our very first co-hosted podcast, and that's about 11 years ago now. And it was so much fun. We thought we would do another one, because I think the things that we've learned over the last 11 years, some of the things we may have done differently, but also looking into the future, how are businesses able to really build their brands, build their reach, their visibility, and of course their thought leadership through using video, through using podcasting, and of course what exciting things are coming up in the future, and so much more. So welcome, Keith.
Hey, welcome back. And look, you're using StreamYard. This is a development we've actually discovered since we chatted last. You've got all these great little things on the screen there that tell me people my Twitter handle, my website, who I am, and it's in HD, so it looks great. So you're sharing your message in the format that people love, video, but it looks great. It's live, so we're expanding all the time, aren't we?
We are. I mean, if we think back to 2008, we used Blog Talk Radio platform, which was good at the time, and it really was one of the only platforms at the time to be able to podcast. And so much has changed. So much has changed over the last 11 years, hasn't it?
Amazing.
Now, I was going through the archives, and I found this. I just have to play that.
Okay.
And have a listen to this.
Tips from the Twitterverse.
Tips from the Twitterverse, eh?
Tips from the Twitterverse. Yeah, who knew back then that you would become the Twitter video specialist?
Actually, look, you put that right on me there, but you're right. At that time, that was just a little segment we did for fun.
Yes.
I think possibly that's the first time in my career history that I really acknowledged that Twitter was a thing.
I know. And I share that because for a couple of reasons, because I listened to my first introduction and the sound was very, very weak. So I can't play it because people might not be able to hear it. But you can really see the difference. And I shared that on my Insta live. And I said, look, create with what you have at that time and get it out there. Because at that time, it'll suffice. It'll be fine. And you'll look back and reminisce and think, oh, my goodness. But for you, back then, Twitter was something that you thought, hey, this is a great tool that we can use to amplify our podcast, our message. And, of course, you then subsequently became a real expert, a real authority on how to use Twitter. And now, of course, you're incorporating video. And back then, little did I know that podcasting, the very first one that we did, hello, Keith, because the technology would often drop out on us, that now, kind of 11 years later, it's gone full circle and now doing that.
What you said there is a very good, let's pick up on what you just said there. I don't know, maybe 2016, I knew that video was coming and I wasn't that excited about it. I've got to be honest, like a lot of people I know, I wasn't that excited about putting my face on the camera, but I knew it was coming. So I just said to myself, I'm just going to do my best where I am. I bought a webcam that's 1080p. I bought a light so that my face is not so dark. I just slightly improved each time. And as you do this, which is better than the last one, each one gets better. And when you look back years down the track with a dinky little reverb sound and tips from the Twitterverse, that was like 2008, and laughable now, but at that time that's all we had. Yeah. So if you really embrace the idea that changes are coming, and you can be at the forefront of those if you want, and just do your best, just have a go with what you've got, and you'll find that a little light from Bunnings and a small webcam from Officeworks is enough for now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost that much money, and suddenly you're out there and you're getting your message out there. In a sea of people that are trying to get their message out there, hiding. We are now trying to encourage people to have a go. And these shows, which we're going to do regularly now, are just an idea of, here's something to try. Have you thought of this? I've tried this, like an experiment I did last night, which I'm eager to tell you about. All these experiments I'm running, some of them work, and I'll tell you about those, and some of them don't. And I probably won't tell you about those unless they provide an insight in what not to do.
Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, if we would have been embarrassed that we had to go down the milk bar and get a $10 phone card and ring in to Blog Talk Radio in 2008, if we were embarrassed by that, we would never have started. And look at us now, 11 years later.
That was normal, wasn't it? And there's something else that I want to talk about in that area as well, is that so often we neglect or we ignore the skills and talent that we naturally bring, because that can really help us in what we're doing, you know, our unique stories, our journey, our talents and strengths. And one of your strengths, and a colleague of yours, your musos from your background. So I wanted to share this. I love this. Let's play a little bit. This is so cool. So this is the theme song that Keith and share. Mark, you want to give them a shout?
My mate of, you know, I tell you what, I want to share this story. Given that you've just said this is fresh off the charts. In 1991, Mark, my mate who wrote that song or that music using a really cool web app where we just layered it. We added drums and we added bass and we added keyboards, and then a mate of mine played guitar, and that turned into the theme song for our show. And then I got a friend of mine to overlay it with a radio voice. And these things all grow. But in 1991, my mate and I, we wrote 2 songs and we sent them away under a theme song called 3 Minutes to Heaven. At that time, 3 minutes was the perfect time to write a song. In and out, verse, chorus, double chorus, end. And we wrote these songs. We sent them out. Nothing happened. 1991. It was the 19th of the 9th, 1991. And the reason I'm saying that is because my mate Mark, who's just got a recording contract just now, he's got a publishing deal for all the songs he wrote ever since that time, hundreds of songs. He kept going. It's absolutely perseverance 101. And he got his recording deal on the 19th of the 9th, 19. Really? So we're actually catching up on Saturday night.
Are you serious? That's amazing.
Amazing. 19th of the 9th, 91, we wrote songs. We sent them away. Nothing happened. That's not unusual. Mark kept going. And on the 19th of the 9th, 19, he gets this message to say, you know what? Your songs are good, man. You're really good at this. Why don't we start promoting those songs to what? Because he writes songs. He's a songwriter.
Yes.
So it's a perseverance story.
Oh,
Here's our perseverance story. 11 years ago, we had this really cool idea, and we're still going. And it's just about having a go. Picking yourself up after something doesn't work out. We've had many of those stories. And just trying again. And now we're live streaming with StreamYard, and I can't talk too highly about this thing. Look at it. We look like we're on the TV. Looks like we're on the TV, doesn't it?
I had to play that because I love that, you know, and it is. And the reason I would love to share this, and it's a real example for 3 of us, and, you know, please say congratulations to Mark, because I know he's been writing songs for all those years. And of course, he so kindly worked with you to create a theme song back then. It takes perseverance. And how many business owners, how many people give up? And we don't know when we are at that top of that, you know, that tipping point. We just don't know when that is. But so many people give up and say, you know what, well, it's obviously not going to happen for me. And you never know that next opportunity. Imagine if Mark hadn't continued to write songs and had gone and, you know, done something else. So yeah, that's a great story. So looking back, would there be things that you would have done differently, knowing now what you know?
Yeah, I've been asked that a few times now. You know, the thing that I find, and this is really important, a lot of what we did, there was no rule book. So short of going back and telling myself in a time machine what to do, there's no way to know what to do.
Yeah.
But I tell you one thing I have learned, and that is that you don't have to see the whole staircase. I've heard this phrase before. You don't have to see the whole journey. Some people get a bit locked into, well, what am I going to do when I grow up? Well, sometimes the real power is saying, you know, let's think 100 days. I've started recently thinking about this. Let's think about the next 100 days. Sure, I've got a big plan, but I'm not going to get wrapped up in the big plan. I'm going to focus on something I can do now. And that helps you maintain enthusiasm, because that's the hardest part about being an entrepreneur. The thought of, God, I just had another go and actually it didn't work out. And that's the third time. And sometimes it's hard to keep going. So I would have probably been a little bit less hard on myself. I just thought, okay, well, it's part of the journey. I don't think I really honored that at the time. Each goal was very strong, and the pain was very hard when it didn't work, because we've had a couple of false starts. But I guess the only thing I would do differently is I would just maintain the enthusiasm in the down days. And I'm not sure really how to do that. I mean, I'm not sure. I guess it's a matter of having mates around you to say, look, you're doing good. Focus on the wins. It's not all beer and Skittles. You've got to have the down days to learn. Like, there's no way we would be here in 2019 if we hadn't have had the courage to start a radio show on the internet. I mean, that was unheard of, man. It was just unheard of.
Many people thought we were nuts, because back then we were both from the career industry, of course. Back then people were seeing clients face to face. Even the thought of communicating with clients via email or by phone. I mean, back then Skype, I think, had only just
only been invented.
I don't even know if
it wasn't owned by Microsoft
then, to be honest. No.
Well, to superimpose 2008 with 2020, because we're knocking on the door of 2020 now. My story that is very, very reminiscent of 2008 is that I have decided that I'm going to do online conferences. I have decided, with a mate of mine in Dublin. Now, 88% of people are saying, mate, you're crazy. Conferences about being in person, having a cup of tea and a croissant. I said, no worries, you go and do that. If you want to go to an in-person event, great, do it. If you want to organize an in-person event, no worries, I'll help you with that, but I'm not doing it. I'm not doing that myself. I want to be the guy that in 10 years' time can look back and say, you know what, we sort of pioneered online conferencing. There's a couple of advantages there. You don't have to travel, which saves you buckets of money and buckets of time. It's much better for the environment. And plus, I can just turn up and put my webcam on and I'm here.
Yes.
And so this is very, very similar to the feeling we had in 2008, where we said, you know what, we're going to run a radio show at 10 o'clock on a Monday on the internet. Oh, that's stupid. That's a stupid idea, Keith. I just can't believe how stupid it is. Well, look, if you want to sit in a room and touch one-on-one, do it. That's the model. And people are still doing it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be that guy.
No.
I don't want to be the guy doing what everyone else is doing. You and I both are at the forefront trying things that haven't even been invented.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I think it's so important, especially for business owners or entrepreneurs who have that, they want to challenge the status quo, because many, many people will say and look at you and say, I don't know what they're doing. And so it's so important, I think, to surround yourself with other people, even if it is just one or two, who get your vision, who understand, and who allow you to experiment, because it is an experiment. And here's something that I've learned, that when you are challenging the status quo, and you said it beautifully, there was no rule book on how to podcast. We had to create it as we went along. And I think we have a lot of our learnings from the failures and from what not to do. I mean, all of the things that I'm doing now is from what we did back then, or what we did not do back then. So we're kind of creating the rule books, but to be mindful, to keep your eye on your vision and what you know to be true, because often it's when the things do start to happen, and some don't, that the other people will then turn to you and say, because what are you doing actually? Tell us a little bit more about that. And I think the biggest insight that I've had is, as you said, to not be discouraged and disappointed through the failures, because those failures are going to be the greatest insight and what you can share and learn and teach to others, I think. Because entrepreneurs, the highs and lows and the experiments that you do, we see people successes, but we don't see all of the thousands of failures and the times before.
I think that's the hardest part. You see someone who has a unicorn, a company that makes $1 billion in 1 year, and you think, well, how did that happen?
Yeah.
And you only focus on the one unicorn that you've heard of. You don't worry about all the other millions of businesses that are struggling to pay the rent. And I think it's, you and I both hang out with a lot of entrepreneurs, and you've got to have the chutzpah to say, you know what, it's not going to be rosy every day, but this is my journey. Yes. And my journey is very unique now. We started a radio show in 2008. You kept going with podcasting, which you are now the queen of, undoubtedly. And I decided to morph into Twitter, and then morph more importantly into Twitter video, because that's a niche that I really wanted to expand on. And now people are coming to me for that. And that's only through perseverance and the down days. I'm not going to tell you about the down days. I'll just tell you about the good times. That's what social media is about. But there are down days, and you've got to have friends around you to pick you up, to keep your head clean, and just to sort of get you out of the hole. I'm not going to talk about that because that's the dark place. But it does happen, and I'm only able to learn and share, more importantly, what I learn, because I have the courage, if that's the right word, to have a go.
Yes.
Like, I want to share this experiment. I'm so excited about this experiment. I'm talking in a couple of weeks in an online conference, our first ever online conference, 13th of November, Melbourne time, 12th of November in the US. And I'm going to be talking about Twitter video, and a friend of mine's talking about LinkedIn. You're talking about podcasting, and another mate of mine in Toronto is probably going to talk about YouTube. We haven't worked out what he's talking about, but he's definitely going to talk about something cool. There's going to be a group of us talking. I'm going to talk about Twitter video, and the reason I can talk enthusiastically about Twitter video is because I'm always experimenting. So yesterday I ran this experiment, and I've been running this over a number of months. I use this site called Tweeps Map, which tells me who's following me and who's not, who's unfollowed me, and how many people are looking at me, my tweets, and who they are, who they follow. And yesterday my tweets reached 15.8 million people. 15.8 million. No, not even a TV has that range. Right? So I'm so proud. I did this quick video, and I've been experimenting with lengths. And this video went 10 seconds. Yes. And people say, well, geez, what can you do in 10 seconds? But it was just a little teaser to say, I'm so proud. My tweets reached 15.8 million people. Thank you. And I called out a few people. Now, that video has had 3,000 views overnight.
Yes.
And that's almost a personal best. And the thing that's great about Twitter and these other social media sites is it tells you exactly how many engagements you've had and who are those retweeted you and where they are, not where they live, not where their house is, but what town they live in. So if you want to reach out to that person, a real person, and say, thank you for retweeting, I owe you one.
Yes.
Sure, they live in Dusseldorf and you're never going to go to their house. It's not privacy. It's just there's a person living in Germany who retweeted me. Maybe there's some synergy there. Can we work again together? So I'm constantly retweeting people and constantly researching things so that business owners and entrepreneurs have a sort of a passion for things. Whatever it is, pet care, health food, coffee, whatever it is, you're into this because you love it. And you want the rest of the world to love it too. It might just be your town, but it might also be the rest of the world. So I'm constantly experimenting with video to find ways to get the word out fast. And I got it. I worked it out. 10 seconds, looping videos. I'm going to talk about this in the Melbourne event and also the Dublin event. But I wanted to give a bit of a teaser as to why experimenting is important. Do you do this with the podcast, and how do you do it?
I do, especially on how to leverage your podcast. One podcast can be multiple pieces of micro content.
That's right.
And if you've got, your pillar thought leader content that's part of that, then you continue to repurpose that across the many channels that we have. But one of the things that I love about the upcoming online conference is talking in the area of podcasting for introverts.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Tell me.
Because so many people assume that podcasting, because it's very much a visibility tool and getting out there, that it really is best for people who love to showcase themselves, love the limelight. However, I mean, I do love speaking and I do love sharing the message because I like the impact the message has in transforming people's lives. It's that heart that on their behalf that really drives me forward, making a difference one podcast at a time, one message at a time, which is why I loved our tagline back in Career Success Radio days, which was, in your key theme song, making a difference. The song that you wrote is so important. But I'm an introvert. I'm an extroverted introvert. So if I've got a microphone in front of me, if I'm speaking, I'm fine. But if I think of going to conferences or events and I know no one, I would rather go sit in a cave,
It's a worse nightmare. That's the worst scenario of all.
Yeah. And how many people are like that, who are going to conferences who really don't want to? And I think we're at a stage now or at a time where we don't have to go to in-person events. For me, I would much rather establish relationships first online, and then if I'm going to an event or a conference or, networking, I've already pre-established relationships and it's deepening them. I already know them, rather than going cold and not knowing anyone. And I'm convinced that there are many other introverts who also struggle with the thought of podcasting. But when you do it correctly and you've got the right foundations in place, not only can it deliver fantastic ROI for your reach, your visibility, and obviously your business, but it allows you to have deeper conversations and build that connection with your guests if you incorporate guests into your podcast lineup.
Well, I was just going to ask whether or not you would recommend a pure introvert have guests, because that takes all the pressure off. All you have to do is ask a question and let the other person speak for most of the time. And suddenly you've got this piece of content that showcases you because you're in it. Mm-hmm. And the real power that I really want to pick up on this, the real power of guests and in interviewing others is the insights that you bring in between the questions. Mm-hmm. If you just, and I've seen this happen millions of times, you ask a question off a sheet and you go, oh, that was great. Yeah. But you don't elaborate, which means you either are not interested in it, you're too busy, or you don't know. Mm-hmm. But if you do know, hey, let's pick up on that. You've just said a really interesting thing. Can you just expand a little bit on what you said there? What that does is it shows that you've got some skin in the game. You're researching this too, even though you're not blowing your own trumpet. You're in the game. Mm-hmm. And I love interviewing people and being interviewed because it's a two-way flow. Yes. Even in the course of this interview, we've mentioned many things that I didn't even think about yesterday, and you mentioned them, and not everyone.
You go on a journey, isn't it? It's that freestyle. Like we don't have any notes. We don't have any notes. We don't have any structure other than I said to you, I've just put this heading together. Yeah. But I've done thousands of interviews over the last 11 years. You've done many interviews yourself. You continue to. So I think it's a skill that you learn. And if I listen back and I played it to my daughter, the intro that I did for Career Success Radio, which when we first started was called Career Communicate Radio. Used to come up with all these fancy smancy terms. Now it's like, no, just anyway. And my voice, I could really see there was stress, kind of behind that voice. It was in the upper, it was not deep in the chest because it's that level of confidence. And so that was me many, many years ago, 11 years ago. And so you develop, your confidence develops. And I'm convinced if you are fearful of something, don't wait for confidence to build. You've got to get skin in the game. Because the belief that you have of yourself that you'll be no good or whatever, you're going to make a mistake, that will subside as you continue to get out there and do it, to the point where you're doing it, then you can't have that belief anymore, can you? That, hey, this is not going to work or I'm no good.
The reason why this is really important, this is probably the essence of why your session is so powerful. So many people, I've been to events like this, I've been subjected, and that's the right word, I've been subjected to this in the past. Most people want to sell you things, and they don't really have any interest in you. And if you do that really poorly, it's very obvious. Okay, I've got an event coming up and here's where you can get tickets. Well, why would I buy tickets to an event I've never heard of? Yeah. What's in it for me? But if you have this podcast every week or every month where you're interviewing people and you're talking about cool things and you've got a following, then you can easily say, hey, guess what, guys? We've actually got a conference about this coming up next week. And if you've been watching the podcast or watching our videos, listening to our podcast, why don't you come? In fact, first 10 people to ring up today get it for free. So suddenly you've got this sort of community, and that's a good word. You've got this community of people that are already tagging along with you. And then when you've got something going, it's not this random email that comes out of nowhere. I mean, we're all getting these random emails. Hey, we got an event, 10% off if you book today. Well, I haven't even heard of you. You've given me no inclination that you even care what I'm doing. You just want to sell tickets to your conference. But if you create this content as a sort of an offering, like they're doing, there's nothing in this for us. We're just simply on a riff today, having a bit of fun. We'll share it on Periscope and YouTube, and it'll turn into little snippets on Twitter. And there'll be some content that we'll share for fun.
Yeah.
Because we have got a conference coming up on the 13th of November, and you're very welcome to come. But that's not the point. We'll do more of those, and there's conferences, and we need to make a living, but that's not the point. The point is that we care about people. We want to share what we know, and we want people to come along and want to come. Not just pay the money and turn up and then go away and think nothing about it. We want to build a community of people that come back.
One of the greatest lessons, or the biggest lessons that I learned from one of my mentors many, many years ago, and it has continued to evolve through the years, is that, if people are scared of sharing content on their podcast, sharing content on Twitter video or whatever medium you're using, then don't be. Because, if you're a service-based business owner, and I work with a lot of service-based business owners who want to become that authority, that thought leader in their industry, you can share all of the knowledge and wisdom that you've developed over the last 20 years, 30 years, or even 10 years, if you've really, accelerated the success and you're teaching it now to others. However, you can share all of your knowledge, but there's no way that you can impart all of your expertise in across all mediums. People will still, if they want to, fast track, accelerate their success, learn all about the pitfalls, get your feedback and brainstorming. They can only do that through working with you. So give your best, wow people, become known as that go-to authority that delivers exceptional value everywhere he or she goes. And and people will think, well, if that's what people are sharing for free, imagine what it is like to work with them personally or in a group experience.
Yeah, that's the mindset shift, isn't it? There's been a lot of people have said, well, why would you give it away? But the point is, there's a couple of things going on there. One is it's crowded. So there's a lot of people doing what you're doing. You're not alone in the world. And if you just spam people expecting them to buy your stuff, then you're going to put them offside. So the first thing to do is to create content just as a riff like this, just to have a bit of fun, and we're talking, and there's examples from the past, and there's going to be some insights from the future about the future, and then we have a bit of fun. We'll put that out. But if you want to work with Anne-Marie about getting your own podcast, well, she has to talk to you about that. You can't listen to some random 1-hour conversation and make up your own stuff. You need a coach. We all need a friend to sort of help us along the way. That's why we do this, because we know that not everyone's a self-contained island. Like Milton said, no man is an island. So you can't do everything yourself, and there's real value in actually getting a coach to say, actually, I've been here before. I know where this is going. I can help. So you can never give away everything. I've been doing this since 2008. There's no way I could talk for a year and not give away everything. And I could talk for a year.
And you know what? Every business, every person and their circumstances can differ, which means, your expertise, Keith, my expertise, or whoever's listening and watching, their particular expertise, whilst there is, perhaps the steps and the system that you teach people, it's going to be different for every circumstance, because some people might want to sell a product. Some people might want to sell a service. Some people might have experience or knowledge that is quite different and unique, and consider, oh, I'm not going to share that because it's not valuable. In the career industry, how many people were going for a job interview, yet only spoke about the last 5 years, not talking about the last 10 years, and yet there's such great transferable experience in the 10 years that when you talk about it in a way that relates to the new job, you position yourself as that, must-have employee. So there's a lot of things, I think, as business owners, and I've been there myself, where I've tried to do things on my own. It's taken a lot longer, made a lot more mistakes, a lot more, and that if I was to hire someone who is where I want to be because of their knowledge and expertise, and they can see things, the unseen things, which often has us going in circles. So, and I'm just sharing that because so many people feel scared to share their knowledge. Why would anyone want to hire me if I'm sharing this content on my podcast? But I would say, when you continue to share value that way, you continue to build know, like, and trust, and position yourself as the go-to person that your ideal client who wants to work with you would consider no one else.
Well, let me give you a really cool, rock solid case study that I've been studying for years.
Yeah.
Social Media Examiner started in 2009. And they started with, I think, 3 blog posts a week, and they went to a podcast once a week. They have an event once a year in San Diego, goes for 3 days. And they have about 5,000 people coming now, 5,000 people. And the way they promote it fundamentally is that once a week, for free, for 1 hour, they interview one of these speakers about the absolute latest invention in the social media world. And they talk about it at length with complete freedom. Hey, this has just happened and we're just absolutely pulling it apart because we know that you're going to come and see me speak about this in 1 year's time in San Diego in March or April, whenever it is. So from this wholehearted support network of once a week for a year, they do these podcasts with the world's leading experts on social media. Then once a year, they all gather in this spot. Now, there's nothing that the podcast can give you that prepares you for the in-person experience. There's 5,000 people in a room hanging off the word of like 100 social media gurus. The podcast is not even close to that. So sure, it's free and they're giving it away, but they're actually promoting a conference, which is like an experience. It's really immersive. Right? And that is an extremely good example of how a free offering can lead to an elongated strategy, which blows everything out of the water. 5,000 people in one room for one weekend compared to like a free podcast on a Saturday morning. There's no comparison.
No
Without one, you can't have the other.
True. Fantastic. Great insights there. Let's talk about foresight. What are some things that you're seeing, maybe experimenting with, Keith, yourself, but you kind of see that we're transitioning towards, and it opens up a whole new exciting space for entrepreneurs and business owners to build leadership?
Let's pick up on this idea because this is really where I'm heading. I did a gig in Jamaica and I've done a gig in New Zealand, but I didn't go. And the reason I say that is I personally hate flying, and we live in Australia and it's a long way away. So one of the things I'm starting to notice is that people are using their time better. So we're not commuting as much and we're not flying as much. So there's a lot of tech around 3D, VR, virtual reality, holograms like Princess Leia from Star Wars, which was 1976. 1976 that movie came out, and Princess Leia did the little hologram from R2-D2. Obi-Wan Kenobi, I need your help. Can you come and find me? And of course, that was just a science fiction movie set a million years in the future. But now people are saying, you know what? I don't want to fly. I don't really want to go and spend 18 hours of my life sitting in this can in the air. Sure, I get to watch a movie and I get fed, but I could be doing so many other things in that time. So there's a lot of tech, a lot of insights around the idea that how can we use our time better? This StreamYard is really an extension of what we've been doing for years, which was Zoom. You can't add these really fancy titles on Zoom. You can't live stream. You can live stream Zoom now, but this seems to take it up a notch. So I'm researching a lot around the idea of sharing our wisdom, but in a time efficient way. In the years gone by, I would have had to either gone into the city or jumped on a plane and gone to Sydney or overseas, and that would have been sometime in the real world, but mostly at the airport or in a taxi or in a plane. So what I really want to see happen is I want to see this tech evolve to the point where I can easily turn my webcam on, fire up my PC, and I'm there. That way I can be at home at night to cook for my wife, because I like cooking and I love my wife, and I want to be home for that. I don't have to spend so much time in transition. Yeah. And I think that's a piece of tech where we're starting to see this idea of not tech for tech's sake. The idea that we have busy lives with kids and parents that are getting older and dogs that need walking and houses that need cleaning and meals that need to be prepared. And all of these things can get done by someone else maybe. But there's times when we want to spend quality time with the people we love, and we don't want to spend time at the airport or in cars or on planes. Are you starting to notice this bubbling up too, or have I introduced you?
No. I think I do, because I'm an introvert. Sort of, whilst I don't mind traveling if I'm on holiday. If I'm doing that all the time, just the thought of it makes me feel exhausted. But as we know, we've got finite amount of energy, finite amount of time. So if we're spending a lot of time in travel, that's unproductive time. Sure, we can take our laptops with us and things like that. But imagine if you are a coach or a consultant who loves to do group coach training. And I love taking people through groups. There's a fantastic ability to bounce ideas off one another.
Yes.
I have a mastermind. And when all of us get together and we start bouncing ideas off one another, the ideas that come from that is amazing. But imagine if you could all put on glasses or something that it seems as if you're all sitting in the same room together. I mean, people might say, well, why can't you meet together? Well, I mean, if you have got clients or you're going to see a coach in the other side of the world, on the other side of the world, that's a lot of time you need to travel.
And as an example of that, the Dublin event, which is on the 4th of March, is a physical event in a pub in Dublin. But I'm not going there. It's going to be 2 a.m. my time. And I'm going to Zoom in the middle of the night. Because if I was going to go there, it's 2 flights and about 18 hours out of my life to get there. Then I'm never going to get back. I can't do anything while I'm sitting there in a plane.
Exhausted too.
And I'm exhausted. It takes me a day to recover and a day to, get back. And all of the jet lag.
Yeah.
So you've actually mentioned an even deeper idea, and that is the group thing. Can you do groups on StreamYard, or is that still the domain of Zoom for that?
No, you can. You can have up to 6 people on here.
Up to 6 people on Stream. Can you tell me a little bit about how StreamYard works? You've been experimenting with that.
Yeah, so you can have up to 6 people. You can share your screen. You can take off these overlays. We'll hide this.
Okay.
You can make it like this. So it's obviously a little bit bigger. But yeah, I can share my screen. Obviously, I have not done that yet. But you can show little videos. You can put here's the Thought Leader podcast graphic.
So it's like a full-on studio, isn't it?
Yeah, lots of different things. And there's other little, like if I wanted to do that, we could have done that too today, just with our name. So it's a lot of fun things. Here I've got my outro for... So you can incorporate some incredible things, within.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. So let's work through the couple of options. Here's just face-to-face next to each other, 2 people, but you can have up to 6. You can have an overlay at the bottom, just the bottom.
Yep.
You can have an overlay at the top and the bottom and the big faces, but that sort of looks a bit crowded. You can zoom out and you can have small faces with, so you can have that look. Which looks fine, but a little bit busy. Then you can zoom out.
Yeah.
That I like that look. I like that look the best. And then you can have this, and then you can have the top. And this is actually what I'm talking about. You know, when we started Career Success Radio, 2008, maybe Skype was invented, but it was clunky and it dropped out all the time. And it looked terrible. I mean, we had Google Hangouts. I never, ever used them because I could never get in. They were awful. Awful. Remember Google Hangouts?
Yes. I never really got into Google Hangouts.
They just never worked. I could never get them to work. So we're now living in an environment where we're just around the corner from 2020. You know, the NBN's arrived in Australia. We've got fast enough internet now for us to zoom in or StreamYard our message face to face or next to each other with some nice little graphics. And I think this is only going to improve. The quality of the graphics will improve. Eventually, it will be a hologram so that you're on my laptop. You know, that's what it'll look like in 5 years, say.
Yeah.
And so the value proposition there, and let's be very clear about the use case for this. The use case for this is that people who haven't got time to travel can suddenly do events they wouldn't have gone to. Like, I was never, ever going to go to Jamaica, ever. There's no way in the world I was going there. So it's either me like this or not at all. And that's okay. There's plenty of other people that can speak in my place. But if you want some of the higher level people that are busy, this allows them to possibly fit in an event where maybe they couldn't have gone to before. So suddenly the options become almost unlimited for your events. If you don't insist on people being there in person, and you can get your head around that, suddenly you could virtually have anyone. If you can say, look, Richard Branson, can you spare 1 hour? Can you just zoom in 1 hour? Can you spare one? Yeah, I could spare 1 hour. No worries. I mean, I'm not flying there, but I can spare 1 hour.
Yeah.
So suddenly you get access to a higher caliber of material. And this is especially important in remote areas. We live in Melbourne, 4 million people, 5 million soon, and 8 million by 2050. But, you know, it's not, what about if you lived in a small town, a country town, and you think, you know what, I want to start my own business, but I'm not traveling to Sydney every day to get the latest goss and go to a B&I meeting. I want to hang out with people in my town, but I also want access to the world's thought leaders. This is especially important for thought leaders because that's your space, isn't it?
Yeah, we certainly can. I just interviewed someone on Women in Leadership podcast just the other day who does exactly that. She is in rural towns and she helps business owners to be able, you know, from those rural towns, build successful businesses through tapping into the community, but also technology as well.
And she Skypes in, or does she go? Does she go there?
No, she uses a lot of the technologies, and I'm just looking for her name to make sure that I get it correct. I think it's Kerry Ann Anderson. So that show was a very interesting show, but a lot of those particular
challenges,
entrepreneurs out in town areas,
the reason why this is important is a lot of this information is really new. And you could completely skip it if you're not in the loop. So if you're networking in person in a country town, years could go by before you hear this stuff, unless you're tapping in to these experiments that we're all doing. Yeah. And the reason I'm very excited about what we're doing here is I'm very happy to share my experiments, because I can't possibly tell you everything that I've been doing. I'm doing this 10 hours a day. There's no way in the world I could share everything, even if I had limitless time. So when I do speak, as you say, that's my A game. And I really want you to come to my Melbourne and my Dublin gig. But that's for another time. This is just me riffing on an idea, regional Victoria, zooming in, holograms, VR, 3D, 4K. These are just words, but the point is that the more realistic we can make it, the more the learning, because we've all seen it. We've all been on calls. We'll be thinking, actually, I can't hear them. I don't know. I know they're sharing something really cool, but I just can't make it out, and it frustrates you, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Well, thankfully, we've been able to hear every single word that you'll be saying. So, Keith, share with us, how can people find out if they're listening today or watching today and they're curious and find out more about this event that's coming up in Melbourne very, very soon? What is the best way for them to find more?
Okay, so I'll be talking about this at the event, but the key is hashtags. So the hashtag for the event is Connecting Melbourne 2019, because the connecting is the tagline, like a TED Talk. Connecting Melbourne, connecting Dublin, connecting ... So Connecting Melbourne 2019, because the event is in 2019 in Melbourne.
Yes.
We also have an event in March in Dublin, and that's Connecting Dublin 2020, because it's the connecting brand. And this is like a little teaching in a way. Connecting brand, the place where it's going to be, Connecting Dublin 2020. So if you want to know anything about the Melbourne event, which is November 13th, just go to that hashtag on Twitter, because I'm a Twitter dude. And everything we've done, this interview, your cool podcasting idea, we did something for International Podcast Day. Jeff Sheehan's coming in from Atlanta to talk. A friend of mine from Toronto is zooming in. Simon is calling in from Ireland. It'll be very early in the morning for him, but he wants to talk about the connecting idea. So, yeah, Connecting Melbourne 2019 and Connecting Dublin 2020 is where I'm heading with these online events. What about you? Tell me about your really exciting podcasting masterclass that you've got going.
Yeah, so I have it's an intensive that's coming up. It's a 5-day online intensive. And so sharing everything that people need to know around the mistakes to avoid, the mistakes that I've made, the mistakes that I continue to sadly see other service-based businesses owners. So if they're a service-based and they want to become known as that specialist, that authority, that thought leader, there's things that they need to have in place. How to go from invisible to influential and profitable with a podcast, and really sharing that. So the best way for people to get to that is to go to podcastingwithpurpose.com /
Here's what I prepared earlier.
That's right. And this is called a banner on StreamYard.
Yeah.
This is another function that we can do as well.
I love this. I've never been able to do the two people on the screen on Periscope. This is the first. I've wanted to do this for years. I've been wanting to do this for years. So we've got to do more of these. They're on Periscope. They're on YouTube now. They're on Facebook. Yes. I'll put some little videos on Twitter. This is an incredibly good idea.
Yes.
I'm so excited that you've taken the initiative and you're really pounding ahead and learning this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love to learn new things and find out how we can amplify our message with the different tools that we have. And this is another great way to share a podcast, and of course, or a live stream that you may be able to turn into a podcast.
Yeah.
But those are the hashtags. So to connect with Keith and find out more about Connecting Melbourne, hashtag Connecting Melbourne 2019 and podcastingwithpurpose.com / intensive, which starts next week. So looking forward to that.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Keith. Look forward to our next one.
All right, no worries. Well, send me everything and I'll chop it up. We'll make some repurposing happen here. And I can't wait to go and have a look at what this all looked like as I look at myself. Oh, there's my theme song.
All right. Bye for now, Keith.
I'll see you later.